This whole outfit is very uncomfortable, but I just like the sleeves. Hello and welcome to the channel. I'm glad to see you back, and if you're new, I hope you stay. It's originally going to be May's book review, but because we're almost done with June, I'm just gonna merge them together because honestly I feel like I've been in a reading slump for the past few days, and I'm not sure if I'm gonna read more books or at least finish more books. I think this reading slump is caused by Lacmona because I cannot get my hands on it and I need it desperately, and I cannot, like, nothing is hitting for me. Like, I have not read a good 5-star book in a very long time, and that is honestly concerning. I just want a 5-star book, to be honest. So give me your recommendations down below and I will read them, and hopefully I will get out of this reading slump. So the first book that I read this past month, May, was The Cursed Bunny by Bora Chung, and honestly it was a very good book. Like, for like halfway through I was like, I am gonna give this a 5 stars, and I was really happy with it. It was so interesting. I loved a lot of the stories that was in this book, but there was this like one story and that was said through episode titles and summaries for a TV show. It was a Law and Order-esque TV show that was like following 2 detectives, and we only got like the brief summary of each episode, and that one kind of was boring and it went on for too long and I was bored and I wanted to get it over with. But all of the other stories were like really enticing and I loved reading it, and I gave it a 4.5 stars. I highly recommend this book. It's a fast read if you're like, you have a short attention span like me. The next book that I read was Acts of Service by Lillian Fishman, and I actually was anticipating this book for a long time. So the story is about queer woman that is dating another woman, and she has like this validation thingy going on that she like starts posting her nudes online so she could get like validation from strangers online. I'm assuming it was Reddit. It's never actually disclosed. And she meets another woman through that post that she makes, and they set a date to meet up, and she thinks that she's gonna like eventually sleep with that woman. So she meets up with Olivia, and she realizes that Olivia is not like someone that wants to sleep with her alone. She actually wants her to be the third in her and Nathan's relationship, and the whole existence of Nathan and Olivia's relationship is very much questionable because Nathan is essentially Olivia's boss, and when you first figure that out in the book you're like, okay, fuck, what's going on? And for the rest of the book the author tries to convince you that, to tell you that, oh no, but it isn't like that actually. No, Olivia like actually enjoys the power circle that goes on in the office. So basically the main character starts sleeping and cheating on her partner with Olivia and Nathan, and in doing so she kind of questioned her sexuality because up to that point I think she thought she was a lesbian, but because she craves Nathan's validation so much, she's confused about her sexuality and her place in the world and what she wants in the world, because she, on one hand, she is established herself as this independent woman. On the other hand, she sees Olivia and how she's happy being so devoted to Nathan. She sees that Olivia is happy and she thinks that, okay, maybe the roles that was placed for us by men is actually like working. She becomes confused for a long time, and the whole book is just her struggle trying to find out what she actually wants, and her relationship with Nathan and Olivia, and what happens with her actual partner that she cheated on. The whole book is very frustrating because like everyone at some point does something horrible, and you're just left there thinking, oh my god, why can't people just act normal? And it's very, like, I felt so angry reading this. Honestly, it was enjoyable anger, so I gave this a 4 stars, and I do recommend it. Actually, it was a good book. It reflected on the ideas that it presented in a, you know, interesting way. If I were to like categorize it with other books, I would probably think in the same group as Conversation with Friends by Sally Rooney. The next book that I read was An Abomination. I, again, do not trust TikTok and their recommendations, for the love of God. Like, learn from me. Do not make my past mistakes. I just saw a quote from this book in a TikTok video, and I was like, okay, I want to see what's going on. So I started reading it. It's called The Witch Doesn't Burn in This One by Amanda Lovelace, and I gave it a 2.5 stars. And honestly, I feel like that was very generous of me. The book is kind of like this collection of poems that I realized later that Amanda wrote in Tumblr, and that was the first red flag. The second one was the fact that I looked up Amanda, and she's a white woman, and the whole novel is like the basic, you know, the sentence that went around in like 2018 that was like,
"You're the daughters of the witches that you couldn't burn."
And because she's a white person, I honestly feel like I don't think you are actually the witches that didn't burn. I think you were the one burning them. This whole quirky thing that, oh, I'm a witch that you couldn't burn. Annoying as fuck. So it was like one good poem that I liked, and then a whole bunch of garbage. And I just wanted to get it over with because I do not like DNFing books. The whole novel was giving white feminism and, you know, the whole movement of let your boobs out. I think it was, you know, it's giving white feminism at its best. Imagine BuzzFeed, Tumblr, white feminism, and millennials combined, and it is this book. I am really sad that I have wasted my time on it. Let me read you some quotes from it. Red lipstick, an external sign of an internal fire. We try to warn you. It's giving Taylor Swift in 1989, and not in a good way. My commentary on this little poem here is that I wanted to bash my head against the wall until I dropped dead.
Bitch, he spits. Witch, he sneers. And I say, actually, I both. Reclaim everything, girlies.
I annotated these so I could like go back and read it to you guys, but I feel the rage boiling in here.
Call me bitch. Call me villain. Call me she-wolf. Call me that woman. Call me your worst nightmare, wearing a red-lipped smile. Even better, call me by my name.
I think this poem here is something that Taylor Swift will see in Target and will buy as a wall decoration and put it up. Think of Taylor Swift as the epitome of white millennial women. And I think she would really enjoy this poem, and I would like her to see it if she hasn't already.
This castle made of witch wire. We all are motherfucking queens.
You know what I mean? Okay. The next book is The Holy Bible. Gone Girl. I love this book so much. Obviously, I love the movie, but this book made it so much better in my head. I swear to God. As you all know, I'm assuming, Gone Girl is about a couple, and it starts when the wife goes missing. In the movie, we follow Nick until we, you know, halfway into the movie, we get to see Amy's point of view. But in the book, it's like in 3 parts, I think. The first part of the book is told by Nick's perspective from the day that Amy goes missing, and from Amy's perspective, 6 year back, and it's like her diary entries. Probably wasn't going to translate well in the actual like movie, but I love that, and I wish that I had read the book first before watching the movie because it was so much better. So we follow that up until, like, I'm assuming that, spoiler alert, I'm assuming everyone has watched the movie at least already. So the second part of the book is just like the twist of like Amy actually being alive and saying that, okay, everything that you have read from me up until this point is bullshit, and I have written it in like a year, and I like try to paint Amy as this diary Amy as this scared woman that was scared of Nick, so people can blame him for my disappearance. Like the chapter that she's like telling her plans up until that point is just so good. I love it so much, and I can see how like mind-blowing it would have been if I didn't know that it was coming. So I can kind of see why this novel was like so big at the time. Cool girl monologue, it's so much better in the book. I love it. Y'all at least should read that chapter with the cool girl monologue. I gave it 5 stars. I would have given it a 10. Nick in this book is actually like so much more anger inducing than he is in the movie, which is saying a lot because he's played by Ben Affleck, and he has a punchable face, so the fact that he is so much more irritable in the book is just like mind-blowing. But he's just like a misogynistic fuck, and so like you can see how from the start he tries to like paint himself as the good guy in our eyes, in the reader's eye, but as it goes on we see the cracks and how he tries to lie to get himself out of things. We see how he's like, whenever he gets angry, he like the misogynistic part of him lashes out, and he like calls women that are not like trying to do anything to him like the worst things. And he after that is like, oh my god, I don't want to be like my dad. Honey, you actually are. I'm sorry to break it to you. And he's a cheating fuck, so honestly I don't feel bad about him. I do, however, feel bad about the dude that Amy killed eventually, but honestly in the books he's kind of an ass, so I can justify it even more than the movie, because he's like trying to dictate what Amy should be. The next book that I have read is Woman Eating by Claire Coda. And I gave it 3 stars. So the story follows a vampire girl that moves out of her childhood home and tries to like find a life in the big city. She gets a art related internship, and she lives alone, and because she's a vampire she obviously can't eat normal meals, and her struggle to find blood is like one of the main concerns of the story. She was sheltered up to that point by her mother, so when she went out into the world and actually saw human beings, basically get to see her journey through finding out how awful men and human beings can be. And yeah, it's just her figuring out that world is not a happy good place that she imagined it would be if she moved out. But it wasn't as interesting as the prompt made it to be. I expected it to be more like A Certain Hunger. I thought it was gonna be actually a woman who's eating men, but it was not. It was a woman feeling bad for being a vampire. A lot of the book is actually her struggle trying to differentiate the thoughts that her mother put into her head from what she actually is. Her mother was like kind of ashamed of the fact that she was a vampire. She thought that they were demons, and they didn't deserve good things and they were worthless. And since she was a child she tried to like inflict those ideas onto her too, like telling her that she doesn't deserve anything more than the pig's blood because we're demons and we don't deserve good things, and she's trying to unlearn those things and find who she is. The next book is Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield, and this story follows a lesbian couple, and one of them is like a marine thingy. In one of her journeys, like she stays under the sea more than the amount that was expected. The submarine kind of like has a malfunction, and they are trapped under the sea for like 6 months. The book happens after she comes back. What the fuck? My AC is making weird noises. The fuck? Anyways, it's dual POV, so we get a chapter from Miri's POV and then Lee's POV, and Lee is like telling what happened under the sea, and Miri is like talking about her struggles trying to connect with her wife who she assumes was dead, and how she has been different from before. Lee, like, obviously was under the sea and had like so many traumatic experiences, and her body is going through a lot because of the lack of pressure, and she is just like mentally not there anymore. As always, it was an interesting read, and I gave it 4 stars, and I do recommend it. I like books that when the romance is like a subplot, and I feel like this book was one of them. I like the fact that they're just a queer couple existing and going through life like everyone else. So was the tag out the whole way? Holy shit. I am not re-recording 40 minutes. I was like, I have read so many books that are just like, about people struggling with life, and I just need some fantasy. I just need to transfer into another world. The Witch's Heart is about a witch's life after she was burnt 3 times, and she survived, and she escaped Asgard, and she like now lives on the edge of the world alone, and she gets her heart back by Loki. When he entered, I was like, is this a fanfic? But I don't think it's like a fanfic for the actual gods and not the Marvel retelling, because Loki is low-key a kind of ass in this book. Like, he does so many horrible shit, and I feel like if it was actually a love interest in a fanfic, that would not happen. He would be redeemed somehow, but he is an asshole and I hate him. So he brings the witch's heart back, and they form a kind of friendship, which leads to them sleeping together. And because this is like ancient times, and obviously they do not know about condoms, they like have 3 kids. A child is like born with it's born with some like irregular thingy going on. Like, one of them has dead legs, another one is a wolf, and then another one is a snake. And yeah, so basically she has this 3 kids. Loki is cheating on her in Asgard. He has a wife, and his wife finds out about this witch, and she goes to confront her. It's like a whole thing. See, up to the second part of the book, it was interesting when like her trying to find herself again, and her thingy with Loki was interesting, and the children growing up part was also interesting, but the whole thing kind of became like drawn out. Like, the journey of her trying to get her kids back was just like boring as fuck. Like, get to it. It was interesting up to a point, but if you're invested in the story, I feel like you will have a good time with it. I gave it a 3.5 stars. So the next book was Calling a Wolf by Kaveh Akbar, because solidarity. We need to stick together, and I will support you even if I got your book illegally because they don't sell it here. I gave this one 3.5 stars. Tree collection, so relatable and so sad, and honestly I don't have much to say about it other than that you just have to read it for yourself, even though like I kind of struggled with reading it because like the format got kind of junky and fucked up. It's like malfunction on my part, not the actual book. The next book is We Had to Remove This Post, and I gave it 4 stars. It's about content moderator, her struggle with her personal life after like she consumes so much traumatizing content to earn a living. She's dating another girl, a co-worker, and their struggle with boundaries and just operating as normal people in society when their job is to like every day consume and moderate the worst of human beings. It has a lot of triggering content in it, so if you're sensitive to that stuff, I don't recommend this book. But it is an interesting story and interesting point of view to something that we don't get to see so often, and I did enjoy it very much. But I think the last chapter of the book was kind of unnecessary. I feel like they could have just ended it before that. That's my only criticism, to be honest. The next book is Dracula, and look at that pretty cover. It is just so pretty. Like, I would not have read this book, this hunk of a book, if it was not for the prettiness of the cover. I'm that shallow, I don't care. I gave it a 3.75 stars. It was an interesting story and not what I expected, because I thought like Dracula would have more part in it, but it was like the journey of other people trying to discover him and trying to overthrow him and just kill him, and like he's like in 10% of the actual book, but he's a very interesting character. I did enjoy reading it, which is saying a lot because it's a slow-paced book. I struggle with those, but I did read this one in a fairly short time. I think my criticism of this book basically boils down to the misogynistic part of it. Mina Harker is like one of the characters, and she basically uncovers the whole truth of the Dracula. She tries to document everything. She gathers people together. She constantly like solves the mysteries of this mysterious character. She does everything, and at the end of the day, they treat her like, oh, you need to stay in, you need to rest. You're such a fragile little person and you shouldn't do anything. Leave it to the men. Like, men didn't do shit in this book. She literally solved the mystery all by herself. Especially, like, it's painfully obvious that Mina's character was written by a man, because she constantly goes like, oh my god, I love men. How can you not love men when they're so strong and they protect me and I love them? And I'm so happy that I have men in my life. Like, no woman said ever. If you're into classics, I think you will enjoy this one. The next book is 20 Fragments of a Ravenous Youth. I gave this book 5 stars. I found the main character highly relatable. The story follows this young woman and her attempts into getting famous by acting. And she's like, she comes from a like small town I think, and she's like very poor, and it reflects on the lower class parts of China and their behavior, and how she as a young single woman has to deal with like rumors, and people just judging her for living alone and like not going through the path of getting married and shit. It's a very funny character, and she does many questionable things to get what she wants, which I respect her for. So the next book that I read was My Brilliant Friend. I gave it 4 stars, and I have been reading this book for a very long time. I kept like DNFing it and then going back and reading it. Like, it's been like 3 months I think, or more even, since I have been trying to read this book. And I think recently TikTok tried to like push me into reading it, because every time I opened TikTok, I kept getting BookTok videos with this book in like their shelves, or them trying to recommend it, or just people reading it and being like, this is my summer read. And it was like gaslighting me to reading it, and I finally gave in and I was like, fuck it. While I was reading it, every time I opened TikTok, it would have something with that book in it, and it was scaring me, and I got it over with. I want to read the rest of it because the cast and the characters are very interesting, and I do love to see their story develop. And even though this first book was very much slow paced at the beginning, and it kind of like drove me insane, but I'm happy that it's past me and I will read the rest of it. The story follows Leela and Elena since they were kids into adolescence, and how their friendship develops in this small neighborhood that they're from. And there's like a lot of violence and just horrible shit going around them, but the one thing that remains is their friendship. Elena is a pen name, and we don't actually know who she is. I know that there were controversies around Elena, the author, and people trying to prove that she is actually a man. And she came out in an interview and said that, no, I'm not a man. And you saying that these novels are a work done by man is actually misogynistic. Honestly, I think the fact that she has captured the female friendship from like when they were kids to them growing up so perfectly is just something that a man cannot do in 100 years. Like, I don't know why it was even a question from the start, because it is obvious. Like, the friendship between them is so real and so relatable. Because they're in a lower class Italian neighborhood, there's so many old fashioned ideas. And unfortunately, as they come into adolescence, their plans kind of like hit so many stops because of other people, and it's just sad to see their story develop in that way. I gave it a 4 stars because of the slow pace, and that was the last novel that I have read so far. So yeah, that was a May/June book review. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you will watch the BookTok videos more cautiously. Hope you have a good day. Bye.